inaugural Festival of Research and Knowledge Exchange. And hello to all of those who are watching on live stream. My name's Simon Baldwin. I'm the Associate Director for Knowledge Exchange, and it is my privilege and pleasure to introduce this first session and welcome you to the festival. We have 19 sessions over the next 5 days, and I'm thrilled to announce that we've over 500 registrations for our events. We've got so much to celebrate in our fields of research and knowledge exchange at this festival. In Research England's most recent assessments of our research and knowledge exchange through the Research Excellence Framework and the Knowledge Exchange Framework, they both confirmed the progress that we all know we've made here in recent years. And it is in that context of significant improvement we cite our festival to recognise and celebrate and to launch the next phase of our development. Before I welcome and introduce our first speakers, I'd like to thank a few people. First of all, to the Research and Enterprise Operations team, to Fiona, Carrie, Loretta, Christelle, Anthony and Richard, and our colleagues in CARES who are organising our facilities and refreshments over this whole week. Thank you to those. And a special thank you to Jamie Harrison, who has planned and coordinated this whole week. So thank you, Jamie. And finally, if you're in the world of posting on social media, either LinkedIn or X, please use the hashtag on the screen, hashtag RKEFest23. So now on to our first session, REF 2028. And if 2028 seems a long way away, it's 4 years, 1 month, 10 days, and about 12.5 hours. So maybe that makes it sound a bit closer. I'm delighted to welcome Stuart Morris and Kelly Butterworth from the Research and Enterprise Services Research Information and Governance team to tell us all about REF 2028. Enjoy the festival. Thank you.
Simon. Thanks, Simon. Can everyone hear me okay? Or is it really loud? Move it down a bit. Welcome to today's presentation from me, as Simon introduced, Stuart Morris. I'm the REF and Research Policy Manager, and my colleague Kelly Butterworth, Research and Impact Officer. In today's session, we're going to provide you with a kind of a whistle-stop overview of what's new for the Research Excellence Framework for 2028, what's the same as the last one, which is always helpful, and more importantly, how your research or your research activity can contribute to the next exercise. There's quite a lot to get through this morning, so what I'd like to do is take questions at the end of the session, if that's okay, because I don't want to kind of get stopped in the middle and we don't finish all the information. So if you have some really good questions, please save them to the end and by all means, ask them. The slides working? There's some technical help, the slides aren't working. Bear me a second. We did test this, it has stopped. We'll do it on the... Sorry about this. This was tested, but it's now not working. Oh, while we're sorting that out, I'll just let you know what today's presentation. So the first thing we're going to look at is what's different in REF 2028 compared to REF 2021 and what's remained the same. So for the next REF, there are quite a few key differences, which I'll take you through, and it's important to know about. Then in the middle of the session, I'm going to give you some detail about how your research can contribute to the next REF, and whether it's your research or the activity that you take place, it's how that actually feeds in, what you can do, what you can understand, and what guidance and training is available. And then in the last part of the session, I'm going to look at how our university itself is actually preparing, what's already in place, what we've been done so far, what we still need to do, what information we still need from the funding councils about how this exercise is going to run. How are we getting on with those? I'll keep talking. So to start with, there was a really nice little slide that said just a quick reminder. So what I'm going to do is just very, very briefly, just set the context to give you a very quick reminder. I think most of you know what it's all about, but just a quick reminder what REF actually is and why we do it. It seems to be working. On slide 3, I think. That's going. There you go. Brilliant. So the research, yes, click on the next slide. Yeah. Okay. So the Research Excellence Framework is a system for assessing the quality of UK higher education across all the disciplines that are delivered in higher education. It's held every 6 or 7 years and is used to allocate over £2 billion in funding, so it's pretty important. It's a process of expert review. It's carried out by expert panels for each of the 34 subject-based units of assessment, which they've decided on. They split all the kind of areas into units of assessment. These expert panels made up of senior academics, international members, research users, and once every university's made its submission, they spend a whole year then assessing everything and then coming out with some scores at the end. 3 elements are assessed: quality of outputs, impact beyond academia, and the environment that supports this research. Now, for REF 2028, they've kind of renamed these, and I'll touch on that in a bit. Once all the REF assessment has been done in that year of assessment, we get an overall quality profile, and the quality levels range from 4-star world leading down to 1-star, which is recognised nationally. There is an unclassified. We don't really want to get that, but it's like a sliding scale of quality. So that's a very, very quick whistle stop. The whole idea of the REF is to assess what research is going on, so they can actually base the funding on those scores. It also helps with reputation of universities as well, and provides them with a kind of a badge about how well they're doing in their actual research assessment. As Simon mentioned, we're already well into the next REF. It's already started. So at the very end of the last REF, the next REF cycle pretty much started. It's a 7-year cycle, so it started in 2021. And REF 2028 will assess research and impact between 2021 and 2028. And as I say, we're already 2 years into the cycle. And as you'll see later on in this presentation, when we talk about what our university is doing, we've already begun collecting and storing relevant research data, planning, working out what outputs and impact case studies we're going to write, how we're going to write our environment statements. But there's a lot to do, and we still haven't had all the details yet from the funding bodies about exactly how this assessment is going to work. So we're kind of still, we've had a lot of clues, but we're still operating in the dark a little bit. Submissions will be made in late 2027, which means we'll have to collect all our evidence, write all our submissions, verify it all to within an inch of its life before pressing the button to send. And there is a button to send. The last REF, I was sat in a room with the former Deputy Vice Chancellor and with the Vice Chancellor online, and you had to press a little button which actually sent your submission off. So there is actually a button to press when people talk about it. It all gets loaded into a massive system, which I'm sure the directors of research here will agree was quite a pain to work with, but we got there in the end. So move on to my next slide. There are some key differences between REF 2021 and REF 2028. This next part of the presentation, I'll provide you with an overview of what these are. So let's start with what's the same. That's always a good point of reference. So REF 2028 will retain the REF 2021 unit of assessment structure, or at least that's what they're saying at the minute. So this is all the different units of assessment that we split up between the different subject areas that we deliver in our university with lots of other universities. So they're saying at the minute, we're keeping that the same. That's really helpful because all our systems are set up to gather the data, the evidence, and write all that and strategically lead within those units of assessment. So fingers crossed that stays exactly the same because it's very helpful. Assessment will still be undertaken by an expert sub-panel for each unit of assessment. So it's the same way of assessing it. We'll put a big submission in, they'll spend a year assessing it. They'll have sub-panels for every unit of assessment. And these are grouped under the guidance of 4 main panels still. So you've got panel A, medicine, health and life sciences, panel B, physical sciences, engineering and maths, panel C, social sciences, and panel D, arts, humanities. As for REF 2021, institutions were required to submit outputs, impact case studies, and a statement relating to each of the disciplinary areas in which they have research activity, alongside also an institutional statement. However, as we'll see now, there's some key changes, particularly in this area, and how these are grouped together and what we need to include within those outputs, impact, and environment statements. So this is the one. So this is the kind of the differences now. What's actually changed? What do we know so far? What's changed in the next REF? So some of the key changes include there's an emphasis. Sorry, is it not working again? Right, can you operate? Sorry, it seems to not be working very well. This. Some of the key changes have been made to the emphasis of assessment from the performance of individuals to the contribution institutions and disciplines make. Also, assessment will now encompass broader contributions to research, and there's also been an expansion of the definition of research excellence to ensure the proper recognition is given to people, culture, and environments that underpin the research system in the UK. So that's a bit kind of technical speak. What does that actually mean? Hold on, he's done it. But it does say, well, what does that actually mean? So building on changes made to the previous REF, REF 2028 will be more inclusive research assessment exercise, capturing the contributions of a wider range of research enabling staff. So it's not just the staff who we have significant responsibility for research. They want to encompass a broad range of staff now to recognise that it's not just the staff who have all the research hours that do all research are the ones producing the research and actually doing the research activity. It's much broader than that, and REF wants to try and encompass that this time round. And to that end, so the work of all researchers and research enabling staff will be eligible for submission. So that means that in the past, we had to enter staff names and they had outputs associated with them, and that we couldn't enter outputs, research outputs of staff who weren't listed as significant responsibility research and entered into the REF. We can do that now. SIGRES is still important. So this is the acronym we use, SIGRES. It means that someone's actually been granted a set amount of research hours and they're research active. What they're going to use this for now is to calculate what's called the volume measure. So they're going to say, right, how many staff have you got who are recognised as significant responsibility research? So for instance, say there's 500 in this institution. That will then determine how many outputs we're allowed to enter into REF, how many impact case studies we're allowed to write, and how big a word count, which sounds a bit kind of draconian, but how much words we're allowed to write in our environments and people and culture statements. They're going to calculate that using our HESA returns at the present. There's still a little bit of debate about exactly how that's going to work, but that's how they're going to do it. Once they know exactly how many we're allowed to write, we get that feedback, and then we adjust what we're allowed to do within each unit of assessment appropriately. In the past, we did a census for that, and we could only enter the outputs for the staff who were research active. It's going to be broader than that now. Also, as staff are no longer entered directly into REF, there will now not be any minimum or maximum contributions of any individuals. So in the last REF, you had to enter a minimum of 1 output per staff member and a maximum of 5. In this REF, there's no limit currently anyway. They've consulted on that, so currently there's no limit, but we'll wait and see. Thanks, Kelly. So the 3 elements familiar from REF 2014 and REF 2021 have been renamed. So this is the outputs, impact, and environment. So outputs is now called contribution to knowledge and understanding. So this is quite different, and it's a bit broader. So this element expands the outputs element and will continue to be largely based on the assessment of submitted outputs. However, at least 10% of this element now will be based on the evidence of broader contributions to the advancement of discipline. So really, we're going to have to write some supporting statements about what else we do around our research outputs and how that contributes to the disciplines that we in the particular unit of assessment. I'm just going to hand over to Kelly now. I'll just give you a little bit of an update on how the impact and how that's been renamed.
Yeah, sorry, I need glasses for reading, but then I can't see out there. So with regards to impact, the impact element is the social, economic and political influence of research, which is also known as impact. And this will remain the same as in REF 2021 which will be a 25% weighting. As you can see, this has been renamed Impact and Engagement. And this is now engagement due to a structured explanatory statement which sets out the wider contribution of research activities to society and the economy. This will need to be included alongside impact statements, and the statement will make up at least 20% of the quality sub-profile for this assessment element. It's been looked into about the weight that the statement will be on a sliding scale, which will be proportionate to the number of case studies that will be submitted, to ensure that the contribution of the sub-profile is no less than a single impact case study. And institutions will be required to submit a minimum of 1 impact case study per disciplinary submission. The number of case studies required in each submission will be equivalent to the FTE within that unit of assessment.
Thanks, Kelly. So they've actually gone back in time with this element, because in Ref 2014, you used to do the accompanying statement. For Ref 2021, they removed it. So they've clearly thought, all right, it was actually a better idea to have it. And I think they got feedback from assessment panels who said it's a lot more helpful having that along, but also given the expanded breadth of that particular area now, it's required anyway to provide that additional detail. Next slide on. Kelly. So here's just a pictorial version of that, showing you the split of how the different elements are weighted and what they constitute. As I say, to 25% for the institutional level evidence, 25% for research outputs, and sorry, 50% for research outputs and 25% for impact case studies. So it's broadly the same as last time, but tweaked a little bit more. There's more emphasis on the environment, people and culture. So you might ask, did they just come up with this in a dark room in the middle of Research England somewhere? They didn't. They did a wide consultation on coming up with the new rules for Ref 2028. It was almost 2 years of activities. So from the very start of the next Ref cycle, in fact, just before they actually started work on how we're going to do the next Ref, there was a future research assessment programme with a NATI acronym FRAP, and it reviewed how national research assessment was carried out. It took evidence from the last Ref, but also went out and did further consultation with all the higher education institutions and associated bodies. They had roundtable events, written consultations, and evidence reports and analysis. They also sought advice from international advisory boards as well, given the breadth of international research that's done in this country. So the results of the FRAP exercise were published in the summer of 2023, and they provided a high-level framework, which is what we've been working to, and a plan about how Ref 2028 is going to look. Almost immediately after publishing that, an initial decisions consultation, which is not easy to say, it was launched. It was asking all institutions, so they came up with this big framework and said, right, there's still a number of elements of this. We still want to get some advice and guidance from the actual people submitting to Ref. They send out a consultation to all UK institutions who are taking part in Ref, and on a number of different areas, asking for their opinions about how that might work. Our university sent a formal response written by the Pro Vice Chancellor, Zilke Machold. We sent that by the closing date of the 6th of October. So we formally responded to that consultation and provided quite a bit of input into how we thought each of those proposed areas might work. The funding bodies are now analysing, I think, over 260 responses to this, and then they're going to. I'll give you some more details in a minute on how they're coping with that. So this is a very quick summary of the next steps in the time frame. So although the initial decisions document sets the high-level framework, there's a number of matters which further consultation work is needed. I've already mentioned the initial consultation on the future research exercise programme work, but there's also a consultation. We've just again sent a formal response on to the people, culture and environment proposals, and there's a number of other consultations which will happen during the year. I think one of the things that kind of stands out on this is we won't actually receive the final full guidance on how Ref is going to be, what we need to do for in terms of submission, but also how it's going to be assessed until the very end of 2024. So it's still a full year away before we know exactly all the rules, which isn't always easy. But I think given the high-level document, we kind of know where it's going, and all of different managers and senior people and the area people like me who work in the area, we're constantly in consultation with the sector, trying to work out what the nuances are to make sure that we're ready for when the guidance comes out. It's not a big surprise and we haven't got loads to do to try and catch up. The other key dates for us are at the end of 2027 when we have to send in the submission, and at the end of 2028 when we'll receive the results. So as Simon said in the introduction, it's not actually that far away, but as you'll see from the next bits to the presentation, there's quite a lot we've already done to prepare for this. And as the label says, hot off the press, there was a statement released about a week and a half ago from the funding bodies, just with a further update on some of the stuff that was just been included in the timetable. So it includes things like a tender opportunity for work to develop indicators for people, culture and environment. That's closed, and an assessment of the feedback of who's bid to do that is in progress. As I say, we've responded to the consultation on the people, culture and environment, and how that's going to be assessed. And also, in addition, there's some further timetable points which they've noted. So for December 2023, for example, in advance of the publication of the summary report on the additional decisions from the FRAP. So we're going back to that summer exercise. They've analysed that. They're going to produce a summary of what the conclusions were from that. But they've actually provided a handy list for us of what might actually be considered, which is why I said before, even though they've said this is going to happen, certain things might change. So, for example, the use of the HESA data to calculate the volume measures for how much we have to send in. They've actually flagged that might be under review a little bit. Confirmation of the unit of assessment structure. We're not anticipating it changing, but they could throw a surprise in. And also, as Kelly mentioned before, the thresholds for the sliding scale for impact case studies. So there's still quite a bit to be worked out on this REF exercise, as you'll see. But hopefully in December and January, we'll actually have a bit more knowledge, and then we can use that in our preparations. I think in January 2024 and then spring 24, there's some further decisions. So they announce who got the bidder for the assessment work for the environment, people and culture, and also the further decisions report. So the final report telling us exactly what's coming out of all the consultations will be published in spring 2024. So I'll just take a breather a second. So that's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what REF is, what's the same as the last time, and what's going to be included in the next REF. As you can see, we're still short on some of the really key detail, but we have a lot to get on with and a lot of knowledge about how it's going to look. So for the next bit of the presentation, I'm going to look at how you, everyone in this room, can ensure either the research you're doing or the research activity you're carrying out or the work you're doing in the university can contribute to the next submission. So it's not just about academics in the field writing research. They're not the only ones that's looked at, particularly given the expansion of the people, culture and environment section. It's really taken a whole look at the whole university who's submitting to see how it's supporting research, how it's generating high quality research, how it's provided impact in its local area or internationally. So they're looking at a lot more of that this time round. So it's really important that we understand how we can all contribute towards this. So as outlined earlier, the outcomes of REF were used to inform the allocation around £2 billion worth of funding. And this is termed quality related funding. And this is really important for the universities because how well we do in REF relates directly to how much QR funding we receive. And that's vital. So the better and better we do. So most people say, what's the point of REF? Well, this is one of the really, really main points of REF. It's about getting that funding. It's about producing research and having a research environment which is conducive to high quality, sort of internationally world-leading research. That means we get more funding. And that kind of then helps us fund all our researchers and fund the work we're doing and fund the university. The other really big knock-on effect of doing well in the REF is reputation for research for the institution. So again, the better we do, the better reputation we have for research. This helps us get more research bids and win those. It attracts higher quality staff and brings in more funding through that as well, and also drives up the quality of our research overall. So it's kind of a big knock-on effect and a snowball effect. The better you do, the more funding you get, but also the better you do, the reputation's enhanced, and again, you get more funding. And it's not just about funding, it's also just about strategic plan. Why are we a university? We want to do high quality work. We want to be recognised for doing high quality work. And that actually influences the region we sit in and also the work of the UK internationally. So the big question really is, what can you do to contribute towards this? And I get asked this question a bit. So what can I do to help the next ref and to submit towards it? So one of the key ones, obviously, is the research outputs you produce. So they can feed directly into ref as an output into the submission. Also, the impact case studies that we write. So this tells us about a particular really big bit of research we've done, which is supported by lots of research. So the work on that by the people that write them or people that contribute to them through their research, anything you do around that can contribute to the next ref as well. For the people, culture, and environment part, this is much broader as well. So the research income you bring in, the collaborations you undertake with other universities, the external, internal agencies you deal with, or down to things like the committees you take part in to steer research strategy or research policy, and the training you might give or mentoring you might give to people, all contribute towards the culture and environment in this university that, again, supports our ref submission. So you don't have to be sitting there writing research outputs. You could be working on a committee to do research policy or doing the training to help people understand research better, or research integrity or research ethics. All of that contributes towards the ref. So again, this isn't just for people doing research. Anyone in this room can contribute in lots of different ways. Okay, thank you. So so now you know how you can contribute. What can you do to make sure that what you do does contribute? One of the key things you can do is systematically record the research outputs you do, the work you do, the impact evidence you gather. So this is more aimed at the people doing the academic research. I'll give a plug again for our main system for doing this, which is the symplectic element system. And it's really key that if you're doing research outputs or research impact, that you use symplectic to record this activity. It's not just about making you conform to the particular IT system we've got to do all this. There's a really good reason behind this. For ref, we have to build up kind of longitudinal evidence throughout the whole ref cycle to support the submissions that we make and the outputs we produce and the impact studies we write and the environment as well. We need a really huge evidence base to actually get better scores within the assessment phase. So it's really important that we have this in one place for a number of reasons. Firstly, so we've actually got it recorded and we know where it is. Secondly, all this evidence gets looked at by the directors of research, the impact leads, the ref strategy panel, which I'll touch on later in the governance of ref. And so we can make really good strategic decisions about where resource might be needed or where it isn't needed, who's doing good practice that could be shared. We need all this evidence. We need to be able to review it. It needs to be in a place where we can actually do this. And as I say, one of the things the assessment panels look at in ref, they look at the evidence that backs up the claims. And you need really strong supporting evidence within your ref submission to back up what you're saying. I've seconded to Research England for a year during the assessment phase, and the two panels that I worked on, that's one of the key things that we're doing all the time is like, what backs us up? Is the evidence there? Is the research output there? And one thing you can't do is very, very difficult to do is if you haven't recorded the evidence, say in the first 2-3 years of the cycle, you can't kind of just make it up or bring it out of thin air. You have to record this all the time. So this is some of the work we've already been doing, even though we're like 2 and a bit years into the next ref cycle, 3 years in, we've already got a substantial amount of evidence. And again, I'll make a plug for the symplectic system again, because we understand that it's still not being fully utilised and we need as many people to use it. So we've got all this evidence in one place. To make my life easier, when we actually do the submission, if it's all in symplectic, it's a lot easier to put into the ref submission system as well. But also for research services in the libraries, I think, as Amy will probably agree with, that if all the outputs are in there and everything's in order, it's much easier then to assess to make sure the outputs are conform to the ref standards. So things like open access and the article processing fees are all done properly. If they don't conform, we can't submit the evidence into ref. So there's a huge amount of reasons why we need to use these systems to actually record the evidence. I'll stop making a plug for symplectic now. So. One thing I would encourage, actually, if you're not familiar with the system, is to actually, I will do one more little plug, is to speak to our colleagues either in our team, the Research Information and Governance team, or research service in the library, who can help you out with how to use the system and how it works. And there's an awful lot of work been going on with that system to make it easy to use and easy to record and easy to actually liaise with. You can also work within your units of assessment with the relevant director of research as well, who provide guidance and input about what they want to put into their unit of assessment submission. So again, at the end of this session, we'll have some contact details about who you can speak to, who you can talk to get further guidance and training. Then there's a few other obvious things you can do. So one of the things is to familiarise, if you're writing outputs and research and doing research, make sure you understand and clearly address the REF criteria. And one of the things is the significance, originality and rigour in your writing of your research. Now that's all be tested and verified by our internal systems anyway, but if you're doing that from the outset and you understand the REF criteria, it's about making sure your research actually includes that within how you write it. And it's not really just about REF, this criteria they produce. It's really good practice in research. So it's not, we're not saying change the way you write your research so it goes into REF. It's actually the way they've framed it is actually really good practice in research. So it actually helps you with the research anyway. And you'll find that all the way through the REF exercise is that a lot of the way it's been written, because it's been written by everybody within the sector, it's actually really about promoting good practice in research and writing research properly. It's not just to kind of serve REF itself. If you didn't have the REF, what they're saying actually makes really good sense and really good practice anyway. Again, in terms of contributions to knowledge, understanding your outputs, making sure your outputs meet the open access criteria, that everything's published in time. Again, you can get guidance on how to do that from the various teams in university. Again, plug for Symplectic, make sure it's all recorded in there. And then with the people culture environment, which is a little bit more nuanced, you can work with colleagues, the directors of research, your impact leads, and with the central teams to understand what you need to record for evidence for your research culture, your research environment. And also about recording any financial stuff with your bids, making sure all that's actually done properly and we've got it all record of it. Because again, it's just going back to that thing of stressing that throughout the whole cycle, we need this really, really strong evidence base. And it can't just be in the last couple of years before we have to submit that we decide, oh, let's get some evidence together. We need to be doing it now. I think that's one of the big messages we got from the last REF is that preparation needs to start as early out as possible. Hand over to Kay now. Again, we are plugging this a bit, but we'll have a little just run through very quickly of what the Symplectic system can do for you.
So just a quick overview of the Symplectic system, because obviously we've plugged it very much. But within Symplectic, there is the impact and engagement module. So that then feeds into the impact and engagement element of the REF part of the process. It's important that all evidence is uploaded within that module. So you might think that it's not worth using right now, but it's easier to get rid of it than it is to try and find it at a later date. So testimonials, evidence of any engagement and impact that you've had through any projects at all, just upload everything into the Symplectic system, and it can always be discounted at a later date. Now, you can also use Symplectic to link your impact and engagement to your bids, your professional activities. So it's a good source of linking everything that you're doing as part of your research within the system as you go along. Myself or the library services team can provide training if you're unaware of how to use the impact elements and engagement part of the system. So if anybody wants any small group training or anything, if you get in touch with either myself in the RIG team or the library services team, we can provide training and support to ensure that everything that you're putting in there is uploaded and you've got the evidence that you require when it comes round to the actual exercise submission.
Good. Thanks, Kelly. So again, that was a kind of a brief high-level overview of how you can contribute to the next REF. So the next bit, which I've touched on before, is how is our university actually preparing for REF? What are we doing as a university to make sure we're going to put in the best submission possible? The first thing we did after the last REF We analysed the results, how we performed, areas of strength, areas of weakness, and any lessons learned from the last exercise. So this is all fed into how we're now preparing for the next ref, influences of strategies we take to improve what we're doing within each of the units of assessment. As mentioned before, we've sent responses to all of the formal consultations so far that have come through from the funding bodies around the next ref design. And it's really important that our university has a voice in that, and that we have responded, and we have. We've also recently had the governance structure for ref approved by Research and Enterprise Committee. And what I mean by this is it's the kind of the committees, panels and groups that we use to actually manage this exercise. We've kept it fairly simple. We have what's called a ref strategy panel, which really oversees all the strategic discussions concerning ref. It's got quite a wide range of memberships. We include all the directors of research, heads of different departments who all contribute towards the ref exercise. And this strategy panel also feeds into the formal deliberative structure on the academic side of the university. So it doesn't sit in isolation. The work of that strategy group feeds upwards to the Research and Enterprise Committee and into the academic board to keep them appraised of what's going on with the ref preparation. It also feeds into the university's executive team as well, so they get a direct line into how the ref preparations are going. The first meeting of the ref strategy panel will be in January this year, and it will be considering a lot of the evidence we've already collected. So we have, again, going back to the data that we're going to get from, I won't mention the word again, but symplectic. We get data from there about how many outputs we've got prepared already, what impact case studies each unit's deciding it might want to actually write for the next ref, what evidence we've already collected for the people, culture and environment statements we're going to be writing. One particularly important one is the data on how many staff we've got who are significant responsibility of research, because that's absolutely vital. We know what's going on there. We have targets from our key performance indicators to meet for that. And the whole reason that's really important, because that determines how much we have to write, how much we can submit for the next ref. So this strategy panel is going to be looking at all that. It's also going to be looking at all the data and evidence coming in from the funding bodies about the design of the next ref until it's finally confirmed. We have to write some documents of response. So we have what's called a ref code of practice for our university, which gives us instructions on how we select outputs, staff, and impact case studies. That will need to be revisited, and that will be covered by the ref strategy panel as well. So it covers a whole wide range of work around the next ref. And as I say, it feeds into a number of different areas to keep the university appraised. It also feeds down and gives direct influence over the directors of research and all the support areas that support the preparation and submission for ref. Next slide. Also, amongst our preparations, the directors of research have been preparing in schools, and in fact, they haven't kind of just suddenly decided, let's start preparing. It pretty much continued on from the last ref. Nothing really changed. The unit of assessment panels they have for each unit of assessment carried on meeting. They maintained the systems and processes they've got and enhanced them following the feedback from the last ref within the schools and within units of assessment to make sure that things kept going. We didn't stop and take a breather for ages. We just carried on going, and the preparation work has carried on. The unit assessment hold regular meetings, and they also, there's an annual round of actually applications from staff for significant responsibility for research. And again, this as outlined before, it's important because we need that figure to meet our KPI and to feed into the volume measure, which will tell us how much we need to write for ref. It's also important that we've designed it to feed into a work allocation model as well for the university, because again, it's not just about the research. We have to balance it. The deans in school have to balance how much research staff can do with how much teaching they have to do. So we have to design the ref systems to fit in with the university as well. We don't get carte blanche to just do what we want across the university and take precedence because it's ref and it's important. There's a whole host of stuff, as you might imagine, going on in the university, which needs to carry on, and we need to fit in with that as well. Even though ref's really important, it has to fit in with the normal business of the university as well. I say, although SIG-REVS remains important for the very reason that we need to determine our volume measure for that. And that's something that the directors of research work with quite closely with their staff to determine who is going to be put forward or who wants to apply, and have discussions with staff. And then that's looked at and approved. You okay, I'll hand over to Kelly. He's got a little bit more to say around the preparations.
Okay, so I think we've covered the symplectic element in quite a great detail now. So, but just again, make sure that everything is recorded in there. I've been working with external consultants, Walcott Communications and Mark Reed. We used Walcott Communications in the last ref for doing checks on impact case studies. We offered boot camps, and the feedback from that was very positive. So we're looking at working with Walcott Communications again, and they also ran Impact Integrators course for us, which was an online training platform with different modules that staff can work at their own pace to complete, and discussions are taking place around continuing offering that area of course. I'm involved in a variety of networks across the UK to ensure that best practices being followed, and networking and finding out information with regards to impacts and engagement, to ensure that any information I'm aware of and any networks that I'm part of, I can distribute that information to colleagues as appropriate. And there are also the impacts leads within units that I will be working with to develop further training and events that can take place in the run up to the next ref.
Thanks, Kelly. So as Kelly touched upon, we use external facilitators quite a lot and consultants. In the run up to the last ref, it became quite an industry across the UK for people going out and getting people to look at the impact case studies, the outputs. And it is really important that we get that external verification as well. Directors of research work with external consultants to review the outputs to make sure that they are as high quality as possible. Any areas that need either enhancing or changing, and getting feedback on that. And with the impact case studies and with the environment statements, again, we rely on external consultants to give us that additional verification or additional comments and critique to make sure what we actually put in is of the highest standard possible. As I say, it became quite an industry, and you have to spend your money wisely. There's quite a lot of people out there who won't offer a lot of advice and guidance, even though they charge you a lot of money. But we've spent quite a lot of time, and colleagues in this room have spent a lot of time sounding out the best consultants we can possibly get for the university to advise us on this. It is quite an important aspect, really, as well as all the internal work that goes on. Just pop this slide up because it just gives you an idea of how that REF strategy panel and the governance of the university is appraised of what we're doing. So again, we don't sit in isolation getting on with the REF to the rest of the university. It feeds into the business of the university, has direct impact on the strategy of the university, but is also overseen by the formal academic governance of the university. The next set really is just some further information for you. About who the key people are for you to contact and talk with. As I say, today I've done quite a very quick high-level guide of the next ref, what's different, what's the same, what you can do. But there's as you might imagine, there's a huge amount of information that we can provide and lots more guidance that we can give you. So the people that come up next, we've got that one up. So that's the directors of research. That gives you an idea of who's leading which of the units of assessment. Directors of research, and I'll name them now, they're in the room. Some of them, they're the absolutely best people to speak to around the units of assessment for the particular area that you work in. Next one is our research information and governance team. So myself as Ref and Research Policy Manager, Kelly as Research and Impact Officer, we can provide a lot of advice and guidance on the training that you can receive and guidance you can get. We have our operations team within the Research and Enterprise Services who again can provide you with a list of the training and guidance around REF. Also, not just internally, but externally, there's a huge amount out there around REF that you can actually engage with. Then lastly, sorry, go back one slide, sorry. Just go back one slide, go. That hugely important research services team in the libraries who provide excellent advice and guidance on the use of the systems, but also how you're publishing your work, outputs, how you record your evidence. This is vital stuff because this is the real technical detail about getting everything right to make sure everything's lined up and can be actually submitted into ref. And then before the last ref, they did an enormous job on thousands and thousands of bits of data to make sure it was ready for the next ref. And then lastly, I've just put a few links up for now, but I'd say at the end of this session, well, at the end of this festival week, there'll be a pack sent out to everybody, which will include a little resource pack around ref, which will provide quite a few more pointers to guidance, advice and training that you can get, and also who are the best people to speak to. We're currently revamping the ref web pages, so there'll be more information on there. On our internal sites, there'll be more information there as it comes along. As stuff is published, we'll update you and let you know when new guidance comes out. As I say, we're kind of all waiting with bated breath for the end of 2024 when the actual full guidance comes out. But there's quite a lot of work to do before then. And as you see, there's a huge amount of work already going on around ref. And that's it from me. So thank you for your patience. I realise I've talked at you now for at least 45 minutes and bombarded with a huge amount of information. As I say, it's quite broad and quite high level. There's probably areas you think, oh, you didn't mention that, or you didn't tell me about this. If you have any questions, by all means, ask them now. If I can't answer them now, I will find out the information for you. But as I say, there'll be a resource pack going out after this, later this week, after this session, with some further guidance and advice as well that would be really helpful around the ref 2028. So thank you very much for your patience and for listening. Thank you. Are there any questions? Have I got you into stunned silence? Everybody?
Thank you so much, Stuart. It was really, and Kelly, really clear presentation. It's just in terms of what you can do as well. Just one suggestion. We had in the last ref, 3 of our colleagues who were actually on ref panels. So Professor Chris Cooper, Professor Sue Backhouse, and Professor Brendan Goff. As Stuart was saying, the panel nominations are likely to start this winter. So if you can, try and get nominated for a panel. We as an institution can't nominate our own staff, but scholarly societies, for example, subject interest groupings do these nominations. And I know many of you are active in societies such as that. So get nominated because it's a really great learning experience.
Thank you, Silke. And just to build on Silke's comments, if you're not an academic, there is also an avenue to actually take part on the assessment side of the ref. So I did it, did this secondment as a ref secretary to one of the 2 of the panels, and that was really interesting, if a little repetitive with lots of spreadsheets. If you love spreadsheets, it's the job for you. But it's really insightful actually, because you get to see how the panel operates and brought back quite a bit of key intelligence really about how they went about their job actually and how they interpreted the assessment criteria. And it gave a kind of a different view to the academic side as well about who people actually assessing the papers, but also how it was organised as well. So if you're a non-academic, don't feel that you can't do that either, because it's definitely worth applying for. I think they come out in probably in about 3 years yet, but so just make a note. But you can take part. I think that's in the spirit of the next ref actually. It's not just about the academics taking part, it's about everybody who contributes towards research in the institution. But it's an interesting job. Are there any further questions at all? Are we all dying for lunch?
Just a quick one about symplectic, and you mentioned about the new ref will be more institution based, but from memory symplectic's quite individual based, isn't it? I'm just wondering how that will work. So if it's like a group project or submitting as a research centre, is it still going to be led by one person? Just
quite a technical question on how symplectic works. I think broadly symplectic, it's about recording the evidence. So whatever goes in symplectic can be brought out to support what you want for that particular area. I'll probably have to get back to you on the technical question, unless we've got any volunteers in the room who might be able to tell us how symplectic works on that.
One level, it is an individual who's got its profile, but you can make a lot of linkages within the system with people that you co-author, for example. You can make linkages between different outputs and different impacts within the system. And then there is also something called the assessment module, which brings together the unit of assessment where you can review each other's work through that. So this is something we're trying to roll out. And I think what Sheila was saying is absolutely right. It's just getting used to some of the basic functions, and then we can perhaps roll out the collaborative tools within that.
And that's one thing we didn't do as well in the last ref. We had symplectic working. The uptake wasn't uniform across university, but we now, once we get much more uniform use of it, we can then bring out the extra functionality that the system has to do things like as Zilka said, that there's lots of stuff you can do as symplectic we've never used, and actually other universities have been ahead of us in that, and it's really helped them with putting their submissions together. And there's a number of other systems at university which we're trying to do that as well. So we're looking at a new online ethics management system which allows a lot more collaboration, links people together, but the evidence and that might feed into the symplectic system as well. So it's about, without getting too technical, we're not trying to be too jazzy with the technical systems, but if we can get all the information in, there's lots more we can do once it's in there. I think the key part is getting it all in there in the first place. Then there's various different things we can do, which, like you say, will support when you've got, it's not just about the individual. Oh.
Hello, it's Tom, Head of Technologies for Learning in Library and Student Services. I just want to add to what you've just said there, Stuart. It's not a question, it's a comment. If people have feedback about processes and technology and how we could enhance them, please do send that feedback to those people, those contacts that we saw on the screen earlier, because that will feed into all of the work that Stuart's just mentioned there, about how we build up that research environment. If we can improve things, enhance things, then we will.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for your presentation. It's very informative. There seems to be a move towards more people being involved in REF, more academic colleagues, and as a head of subjects, maybe more information around almost what you see as the minimum input towards individuals. I know there's a change now from like a 1 to 5 outputs, for example, maybe not that being involved anymore. So can you see, or are we waiting to that level of information?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we provided some feedback on the consultation on, because I think there's a worry in the sector that certain institutions might go, well, we've got somebody who's brilliant research, we'll put 20 pieces of research in for them, and that's at the detriment of other people within either unit of assessment or within university. I think there's not as much information as we'd like so far on that. And I think most universities and groups of universities have fed back saying this is going to need to be something that's looked at and given very, very careful consideration. I think the answer so far is, oh, well, it'll be in your people, culture, environment statement. If you're only relying on certain people, then it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. But I'm not entirely convinced on that. I think they've got to be careful not to game the system and just put in star researchers with 20 lots of research. But the feedback from the sector on that is that they're really going to have to provide some really detailed guidance on how the assessment panels and how that information goes in and how institutions select their staff. It does seem slightly odd that in the last one they tried to make sure it was evenly spread by doing that, and then they've gone, oh, well, let's get away with that now and just, anyone can enter and there's no minimum or no maximum. So it's a bit of a wait and see. I'm sure there'll be some way of trying to stop it being unfair to certain colleagues. And from an EDI's perspective as well, you can see the ramifications of that you might end up with just a certain kind of set of staff entering all the time from a certain demographic. So we are waiting. So sorry, it's a bit of a non-answer. We are waiting further guidance on that. So I think that's everything. So thank you ever so much, and thanks for the questions as well. They're really interesting. So I'll hand over to Simon now.
Thank you. Thank you to both Kelly and Stuart once again. Thank you. Okay, I'm delighted to announce that lunch is being served in the Acre Room. If you've never been into the Acre Room or you don't know where that is, colleagues are there to direct you. And then you're all welcome back here anytime from 1:30 for a 2 o'clock start for our keynote speech by Professor Marcus Manafo. So you're all welcome back. Enjoy your lunch and thank you very much.